Okay, good morning. We'll call this morning's meeting to order. Our first item is the approval of the agenda, and we do have one agenda addition here, and it's a proposal for additional funding or a method of funding for the reentry program.
Move to approve with addition.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Next item is citizens to be heard. Do we have any citizens to be heard this morning on items not on the agenda? It looks like everybody here is for items on the agenda, so we'll move on to the approval of payment of bills and vouchers.
Move to approve.
Motion.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Approval of minutes from May 2nd and May 9th.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Okay, we'll move on to our 8:30 item, and that is a resolution for establishing a capital improvement plan. And we're going to have Lori and Brian. Good morning.
Good morning. We get new chairs up here?
Our old
You got
chairs.
new chairs.
Yeah, we got
I like. And over there too. That was pretty much falling apart over there. So.
Okay, Brian, did you want to lead this discussion?
Sure, I can.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and members of the commission. What I passed out was the preliminary 5-year capital plan that Ehlers and Associates have helped us put together. There's a couple changes when we go through there, but what we're going to ask you to do today is to establish a resolution for calling a public hearing to review your 5-year capital plan. Now, if you remember that during the process of our jail and our law enforcement center, we sold jail bonds for the jail or for the correctional facility, and now we are going to sell, or our intentions are to sell capital improvement bonds for the law enforcement center of approximately $16 million. The sale won't occur until about October, so we'll be able to refine and decide definitely what your amount should be. It's in the $16 million range, but at this early time, we thought the resolution should state up to the $16 million mark to cover any incidentals. So what I just thought I'd touch on, if you're going to be calling for a capital improvement plan, you may want to review that plan, or if people have questions of you from the public prior to that public hearing, they could certainly listen to that. There are a couple of modifications to this. They have, Shelley did not make the improvements yet to the capital improvement plan. And for example, on page 6 in our finance meeting, you will see the expenditure is spread, or is listed all under 2017. We know all of those funds are not going to be expended in 2017, so that will be a change to it. That will be spread between 2017 and 2018. And then on page 7, the amount under the estimated cost of the project is showing $16,086,000, and we were going to go along with the $15,817,000, I believe it is, the amount of the bond. And the other is pretty much accurate. But what I think is important probably is the back page of the document shows that the $16 million bond amortized over the next 20 years, and what our annual payments would be on a yearly basis. Now that will adjust somewhat depending upon what the amount of the bond is and where the interest rates come in, but that is an approximation as well. So what we're asking of you today is to pass the resolution that is in your packet and before you, Resolution 2017-20, which sets up calling for the public hearing to review the need for the capital project under the capital improvement plan, and then you'll call for the bond at a later date to set that up.
Okay. Brian or Lori, and I asked this in our finance committee meeting, but I just have a follow-up. If we set a dollar limit, I asked a question about future projects. And you mentioned the ability to amend a plan to cover those. When you amend a plan, does that then also require a public hearing?
Mr. Chair, yes, it does
Okay,
require.
so, because I wanted to make sure, because it would seem odd that you could,
Just fluctuate the amount.
yeah, just fluctuate the amount after a public hearing is over, so I just wanted to
Right.
just clarify that would still need to be done.
And Mr. Chair, I think you were in on the discussion earlier on when we talked about the 5-year capital plan, and I guess it's for all the commissioners, whether they wanted to include other projects in it or not. And we felt that might be just convoluting or confusing the project that we have at hand. And if there is something later on in a year or two that you want to add, then you open it up and add it to the 5-year capital plan. It'd be just an amendment to the plan rather than a new plan.
When we did the highway construction bonds, that didn't go through the capital improvement.
No, that was a
Plan.
lease purchase, I believe. Some lease bonds
Okay,
that went through the HRA.
okay, all right.
Didn't it?
Now,
No, I'm talking about when we did when we,
Well, the state aid road bonds?
yeah, when we escalated,
Yeah, those are state aid road bonds.
so they were not part of the capital improvement. plan.
no, they weren't. But we did, if you remember, Mr. Chair, we did set the capital plan, and then we added several things
Yes.
to it. We didn't add any more money, but we did go ahead and amend the plan in order to be able to pay for those things, if you remember that dialogue
Right,
that
and
we
that's
had in
because
regards
we
to
had
that.
some things that came in below
That's
estimate,
right.
which allowed us to add additional.
Add more improvements, yes.
Okay. Very good.
Right now, these bonds, these are just for the law enforcement center? That's all this is covering right now? There's nothing else included, okay?
No, no.
Any other questions? The request is to approve resolution 2017-20.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. All right, and then we might as well go right into our preliminary budget discussion, and I know that you had a timeline here that you want to talk about, Brian?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We normally have a preliminary budget discussion, or at least we schedule that, and really what it is establishing the calendar for next year, and then finding out if you folks have any special instructions to us as far as establishing or organizing the budget. And we normally have dialogue whether you want all of the departments in front of you, and we'll schedule that throughout July and August if that is the case. But it just kind of starts the process, and Lori sends out the information to the departments, and they fill out the spreadsheets, and they come back in, and we meet with every one of the departments individually, Lori and I do, and then they also present to you if you have any concerns about any of the line items that they have, and that's how we work through the budget.
I guess I would like to put out there for discussion to the board. I'm a little concerned, you know, we had a fairly good increase this last year. And I'm a little bit concerned of where we're going to have to go in 2018 with the new correctional facility opening and additional staffing and stuff there. So I would think that we would probably want to, early on in this phase, make sure that we indicate to all departments that this is gonna be a difficult year to be asking for new requests and additional funding. That's just my personal opinion here, but I think we're gonna be looking at, certainly there's gonna be some savings in cost shift dollars, but that's not gonna happen right away, like the transporting. We're gonna be hiring new people before that ends. You know, so we're gonna have some issues there, you know, that we're gonna have to deal with, so.
Yeah. And I think the board is very well aware of the last year's events and updates that you had as well, as far as the high demand that we've had for services. And I know the departments are going to try and ask for the proper funding to continue those services, and those will be some tough choices for you folks to make if they, I mean, the out-of-home placement costs, as Rhonda has brought before you several times, was spent in excess of an additional $1 million last year on those. Maybe we'll see a trending down of that. Let's hope we do. But,
Well, we've seen some positive reports in the recent future regarding additional foster homes coming into place. All those can be of help in that regard. So they
Right.
still cost money, but like we have to spend otherwise.
Right. So I'm just saying that some of those costs, I don't want to say they're out of our control, but they're mandates that, I don't know what other choices you have sometimes, you know, with the juvenile center, the jail, the out-of-home placements, not to categorize all those in the same spot, but they are high demands right now, so.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so you,
We'll get it rolling.
all right, that's good.
And, Mr. Chair, if we could, we were hoping that there was an item that you added to the agenda. It's somewhat of a budget item, and it might be appropriate time to
Okay, all right,
have
we can-
Janelle come up and
we can do
discuss
that
that.
now.
Yeah, sure.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for adding me to the agenda. I don't know if you guys got a memo. You should have a memo in front of you dated May 19th. I'm here to talk about the reentry program and give a short update. This reentry program was created in 2003, and it initiated under several grants that were available to us, as well as a local collaborative time study funding. Over the years, we have engaged with applying for additional grant money funds. We've been fortunate to be able to continue it from 2003 up until this point. It does fund 2 transitional coordinators as well as 1 support staff that has 3.5 hours within a work week. Unfortunately, as of this date, we haven't been able to gain additional funds. We haven't been approved for additional grant funding. In July, this board approved $57,000 that will help us carry this staff to June, 1 more month. At that point, we will be looking to utilize local collaborative funds as well as our supervision fees that are collected for gross misdemeanor supervision that we provide in this county to further fund 1 transitional coordinator position as well as the support staff at 3.5 hours through December. And so at this point, I am requesting that there be a motion to allow us to fund 1 transitional coordinator as well as the 3.5 hours through December utilizing those funds. That does mean that we would look to lay off 1 staff. Each transitional coordinator provides services and support to approximately 15 youth. That's kind of on a revolving basis. There isn't a start-stop. It's kind of fluid. They could work with youth 2 months or 9 months. And typically the transitional coordinators are assisting other service providers such as probation agents, social workers, trying to reduce the out-of-home placement costs. They work to either help the youth re-enter into the community from out-of-home placement or avoid out-of-home placement by increasing services within the community in that contact piece.
Okay, any questions? Brian?
And Mr. Chair, the reason this was added to the agenda today, there, as Janelle is suggesting, this funding runs through June 30th. And they were gonna have to come to the board to ask for $58,000 or $59,000 more to continue the year out at the 2 position. And we have been in discussion, she's been before, and we knew that that was not a very positive gesture with the grant program ending. And so Janelle with the county staff has worked on looking at an option, and this is an option she feels that she can pursue with offering continuous service, not at the level that it was at. And I think that's an important point. But also that you also approved filling the vacancy at Juvenile Center, and Steve wants to move forward with filling that. And we also want to look out after this employee or these employees, that they are county employees, and this may be an opportunity for them to move into one of these positions. And that's why it was brought in such a short time period. And we knew that the board would be concerned about the employee and the opportunities within county government.
Well, and we did talk about that in the Personal Issues Committee, and that was kind of we thought was a really positive possibility if they could transfer over and work, and, because their expertise and what they were doing would still fit right in line with the juveniles there, and hopefully they can still work on some of the, the out-of-home placement issues, or helping reduce those, so.
Correct, yep.
So are you going after funding for future money for this?
We will continue to see what we can access. There is still, historically, we've been afforded a YIP grant. Typically, that is reinvested year after year. It's a 2-year grant. We would be looking at a $90,000 grant that covers a 2-year period of time. I don't know if, when we reapply for that, if the funding would remain the same, given that we are decreasing staff, but we will continue to apply for those.
And one of the other things that we did talk about too is the, down the road to potential for, as we're looking at the overcrowding that we have right now in the juvenile center, and what we might try to do there to alleviate that even that other position could, end up falling under Steve's in that area, because they would probably need the additional help there, so.
Yeah, it does seem that there's a lot of grants out there for reentry services. And so I think, dependent upon where we're at, come December and those kind of things, we definitely would keep an eye out for those and be applying. It's valuable service. We do look, one of the components with this, we were renting space at a previous school site. The schools have kind of, the Alternative Learning Center and those things have relocated. We are looking at where we could potentially house this position and possibly address or help with the truancy issue, which, as you guys talked about before, was kind of that mandated area for counties to address, so.
I have a question. Is it court mandated that these 15 approximately youth per person have a transition coordinator?
No, it's, well, I shouldn't say that. Probation makes referrals, and so it could be in a court order. It doesn't necessarily have to be in a court order. It can be on a voluntary basis, but it can also be a recommendation to the court, and then the court orders it.
So in instances that it would be court ordered and then we'd have to contract out, I would assume, some sort of transition coordinator experience, would we be looking, where, excuse me, where would you contract that out, and at what cost?
I don't believe, would contract it out. We know what our maximum is, and so agents wouldn't make that as a recommendation, or they would look to prioritize cases. and possibly make referrals for, I would say, medium risk. The high risk are probably those that we're gonna see go into placement. The medium risk are those that we're gonna wanna address within the community. And so our agents would refer or make that recommendation less to the court, knowing that we don't have that capacity. And there is no other agency that I'm familiar with that would provide this type of service. Not to say that our agents wouldn't continue to make referrals for in-home services or wraparound services, other services provided by other agencies to give that.
So my question was that Clay County won't incur an increased cost that's more than this dollar amount by not having this position funded?
They would not, pertaining specifically to referring out for a reentry transition worker or that relationship. However, I don't know the end result, how it will affect out-of-home placement. I don't know if out-of-home placement then would increase, or how much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll move the request.
We have a motion to approve the request.
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian and Laurie. Thank you. We're going to go into closed session
Right.
here.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, I noticed a couple that came in here and they have a little one here. I wonder if they're here on that item number 7. Would that be the ones who are here for that? Or?
No, that's not Tom Bird.
Okay, all right. Okay, well then we'll just move on with our agenda
Closed session.
order, then go into closed session. So at this time, there's a request to go into closed session to discuss legal consultation pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05 regarding ongoing county litigation.
So moved.
We have a motion to close.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We've run a little bit late. Our next item is the demographic forecast presentation for transportation planning from Will Kornbeck from KLJ. Good morning.
Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners, nice to see you here this morning. Thank you, Mark.
We got,
Doing the heavy techie work.
is that going to be on the screen there?
Eventually.
Can I say something while we wait? Joel, I was in the Metro Cog meeting where you presented this to the Metro Cog board and felt it was so substantive that it deserved to come to this board. So I appreciate the work that's gone into this, and I think the rest of the commissioners will enjoy hearing these forecasts.
It's coming on.
There we
Yeah,
go.
boy,
All right.
high tech.
You're good to go, Joel.
Okay. Well, thank you again for the opportunity to visit with you. This project's been going on for a little bit over a year. And I'm going to talk to you very briefly about the 4 main topics you see here. It's going to be about the background, why we're doing this, the forecast approach, and then a little bit about the forecasts themselves, and I'll tell you a little bit about why we were looking at this, I guess about a month ago now, maybe a little more, at the MetroCog's policy board. So the overall process, why we're doing this, really amounts to it's the first step in updating the long-range transportation plan, which happens on a 5-year cycle. And long-range transportation plan, of course, is essential for allowing us to capture federal dollars and state dollars for MPOs. And we anticipate that we've been seeing growth for so long. We always anticipate seeing growth. And so the biggest question isn't really, are we going to grow, but how much are we going to grow? And so our approach to trying to understand that is to really do what I'm showing you in this graphic. The first thing we try to do is understand what's been going on over the last few years. So we look at a lot of data sources, especially looking at building permits and other forecasts. And our objective is to understand, well, since we did this forecast 5 years ago, how have we measured up? You know, how close are we, how far away are we? But then after we take a look at those kinds of data, we next go in and start thinking about, well, knowing what we know, what do we think are the assumptions that should drive the next growth? And basically, it's a mathematical model. So what assumptions are going to go into the model? And then we basically develop a draft forecast, and we work with a steering committee comprised of representatives from the various local jurisdictions that are participants in the MetroCog. And then after people take a look at a draft, we kind of say, well, you know, what doesn't look right, or we're surprised about this, so how would this change if we did this? And that happens at the steering committee level. We end up producing 2 different forecasts. One is what we typically call our most likely scenario, and it's essentially based on what trends are in place now that have driven us to this point in the near past, if you continue them forward. And the other one says, well, what could happen if everything goes right? And then we move on to basically having to make a decision, and that's why I was at the policy board, this meeting that Commissioner was talking about, and that was to ask them, which scenario do you want to work with? Because we're going to pick one scenario and input that into our traffic demand model. And as we typically have done, we did select the high growth scenario. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some numbers here in a bit, and it'll be the high growth numbers. The stage that follows this, in order to make it usable by the long-range transportation plan process, to get it into the model, is to distribute all that growth that we're forecasting into individual traffic analysis zones. There's roughly 700 of them in the entire metropolitan planning area. So that's kind of a big task, and we're in the middle of doing that right now. And in another month or so, we'll be bringing a final report to the policy board again. So overall, when we looked at the consistency of the past forecast with what we were estimating was going on right now, we found that we were low. And we were low by around 8,000 people. And that begs the question, well, why were we low? And so we started looking at what was different. And the first thing we did is look at the record of births and deaths over the last 5 years. And if you think about how population changes, it can only change because of births, deaths, or people moving in or out. So in essence, it's a pretty simple thing to try and figure out. It's just where you get the numbers from and what you trust for numbers that helps to make it more complicated. But what we found is that there were less people dying than we had anticipated. In fact, the rate of dying was a little bit lower than we anticipated. So we were seeing more people sticking around longer. And then on top of that, we were seeing more people being born. And together, those accounted for roughly half the total 8,000 that we were anticipating to be here, or that weren't here, that ended up here. So the question that really kind of caught our attention was, where are the extra births coming from? Because it can only happen if either people are having more kids than they typically have, the birth rate was higher than we anticipated, or else we were just getting more people who were in that birthing age. And our opinion was that it wasn't likely the birth rate that changed. Instead, we were having more people that were staying around or that were moving in that were in that birth range or that age group. So I've got some detailed statistics here that kind of bore out what we were surmising. And that then fueled our ability to think about what kind of growth should we anticipate and why in the future, the assumptions. And we, as I mentioned, developed 2 different scenarios, and they have slightly different assumptions. And this is really highlighting for you some of the major assumptions and the factors that we're going to drive the growth. One of the biggest areas that we were seeing, even in the last forecast we did, was that more college students were coming to the area, more college students or potential college students from the area were staying to go to college here. And then the big question was, what are they doing after they graduate from college? And what we found was that more people who graduated from college were actually sticking around. If you think about the economy back in 2008, 9, and 10, we were kind of going through a tough time, and the Fargo-Moorhead area was fairly attractive because we were not bearing the brunt of the economic downturn that most of the nation was. So because of that, we found more graduate students sticking around. And if we go to the IRS statistics and look at their migration patterns, we started to see that was being borne out there. So another thing that mattered a bit was the elderly. I'm a baby boomer. I'm guessing that most of you are baby boomers, and not all. And basically what we're thinking here is that where do baby boomers tend to migrate to if they're leaving their hometown in the region? Regionally, for 40 years or more, we've seen this trend where people are moving out of the small towns into the larger centers. One of the main reasons is because that's where the jobs are. But when you get to be my age and older, you're starting to think about, well, what matters to me when I retire? And typically one of the things you're looking for is good health care. And so you might want to be moving to a place where you're comfortable, you've got good health care. And there are some other reasons too, like where are my grandkids living? And so I've seen that, at least anecdotally, a lot of the time is a factor why people move to a metro area. It's where their kids have jobs now, not that where they need the jobs. Anyway, those two scenarios, or those two categories of scenarios, the best case and most likely, just had slightly different changes in these particular factors. So when we actually produced the scenario for the most likely, it's helpful to understand what's really going on in terms of the amount of growth or decline that's happening from births or deaths versus that's coming from net migration. And on the left, you see the chart that relates to the most likely scenario, and on the right, you see the one that relates to the best case scenario. And in many ways, they're very much the same. But take a look at the red lines, which is natural increase, where the number of births is exceeding the number of deaths. And you see that we're starting to move down. By the end, by 2045, we're really almost at a zero natural increase. And in the case of the best case, we're actually retaining more people or bringing more people in during the next few years. That's why you see the jump up to 26,120 instead of staying at 24,050 for 2015. We're just saying that this next 5 years, if we see more people coming in, it's going to fuel our ability to keep our natural increase higher over the next 40 or 30 years. But other than that, the biggest factor is really how many people are we going to pull in? What's our net migration? And the biggest share over time is going to have to be coming from them. So then you ask, well, why will more people stay and why will more people come in? Great healthcare system is going to be a factor. The regional medical facility that's been created here, I think, is going to help to fuel that. But it doesn't just fuel it because people want to be close to good health care. More than that, it fuels it because of the jobs that it's creating. And you may recall the recent Fargo-Moorhead, Greater Fargo-Moorhead Economic Development Study and that whole strategy to try to pull in workers. That was their biggest felt need, or biggest analyzed need. And so they've got some targets. I don't think we're quite meeting our targets, but we're really trying hard to do that. And how successful we are in meeting those targets is whether or not we're going to be closer to the best case or the most likely. Just because how many people we're going to bring in for jobs. Now the diversion is something that people ask about. Will that have an impact on it? And yes, it will. But it's probably more because the community will be more attractive for people to move to without that concern or that risk than anything else. Overall, here's what the best case forecast looks like. And it's just to show you, of course, that the greatest bulk of the population is really on the Cass County side. Fargo dwarfs all of our other jurisdictions in terms of their population. But we are seeing growth in every area. The way we've shown the growth here the last little set of initials there is probably pretty cryptic. It's supposed to be Dilworth, Holly, Castleton, Barnesville, and Horace. Yeah. So I just combined them just so you could see something that didn't look like it was flat. What we did is two different kinds of forecasts. The one forecast is based on what's called a cohort component methodology. And when you have a population that's over 2,000 for a geography, you're able to take a look at the number of people in each age group and start to project how many people are going to die in that particular age group and how many people are going to be born, because there's this many people in the birthing age, females that are giving birth in that range. So we can be very detailed every 5 years and say, well, expect to see this many births, this many deaths, and we just push the system along every 5 years. When we get below 2,000, we can't do that. There's just not enough numbers to be statistically reasonable. And so for them, we use a different method, and it's basically a stratified allocation method based on what's there already. So what I'm showing you is the Dilworth, Holly, Castleton, Barnesville, and Horace. They were the smallest jurisdictions we could do this cohort component method for. Overall, it's helpful to think about, well, what have these forecasts done in the past and where are we heading? And what you're seeing is this slope up, boy, I'm forgetting my math here. The slope of the line is increasing. And is that going to continue? Well, it's probably going to flatten over time, at least when we're conservative in our thinking, that's what we think is going to happen. But you can see here our best case and most likely numbers for total Fargo-Moorhead MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Area, the two-county area. And the black line then represents where we're at right now compared to where the previous forecasts were at. I want to just show you just a little bit of detail more specifically comparing the MSA and Clay County. So you can see where we were at the 2010 census, where we think we are in 2015 or thought we were in 2015, and then going out to 2025 and 2045. You're seeing some substantial growth there in the next 30 years. I also just think it's helpful for us to think about age groups in particular. Recently, the Minnesota State Demographer's Office has put together several presentations that talk about how the baby boomers are going to affect the overall population in the state of Minnesota. If you get a chance sometime, take a look at it. It's a great presentation. But this is just highlighting for you a couple things. It's showing in the blue lines where we're at in 2015 for population by age group, and then it's showing you what we can expect in the next 10 years by age group in the yellow. So obviously we're seeing that 15 to 19 through 20 to 29 group outpacing everybody else already. And we're not seeing a substantial shift in that, but we are seeing a little bit more on the 15 to 19 than the other two. And part of that reason is because in the best case scenario, we're predicting more people are going to come here to college. And of course also young starter jobs. But then the other thing I want you to take a look at is the 70 to 74-year-olds, 65 to 69-year-olds. Two parts of the baby boomers that are just going to mushroom. And then finally, just briefly, I just wanted to show you a couple numbers on jobs. Of course, everybody knows that most of those jobs are on the other side of the river, but what we are seeing is that you're basically holding your own in terms of the percentage of total jobs over the next 30 years. So, as I mentioned, we have this process that we're at step 5 in. We're doing the allocation to the individual TAS zones right now, and we'll be bringing a final report forward probably in the July MetroCog meetings. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I should say try to answer them.
I saw the presentation at the MetroCog also. It was excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is a good report. You used an acronym for the MPO, for the people who are maybe watching, you want to explain what MPO means?
Yes, Metropolitan Planning Organization. Every metropolitan area that has a population of over 50,000 has the opportunity, or maybe even the mandate, I can't guarantee which, to establish an organization that will function to do coordinated, comprehensive, and there's one other C, planning for transportation purposes. And as we mentioned right at the beginning, the primary purpose of this particular forecast project is to help understand the future growth so that we can develop the model for future year traffic flows. That's the traffic demand model. And the traffic demand model and the long-range transportation planning process are a key element of what the metropolitan planning organizations do in every area. So it's aimed at trying to make sure that we spend the money the best way we can to meet the future demand for transportation systems.
The last time this was done, there was, part of its purpose, if I remember correctly, was also to identify potential major traffic corridors, to identify them and to tag them as such prior to development. Has there been any change to what was the previous consideration of major corridors in the, especially in the Clay County area?
I don't believe that there's any substantial change that would change the direction that the previous long-range transportation plan was suggesting. We're not seeing any significant growth that's different than the past growth pattern on the Clay County side. One of the things that's kind of interesting is we do a forecast for the whole Clay County as a whole, and then we do one for those jurisdictions that have over 2,000 threshold. What we're left with is a number of jurisdictions that are still inside the planning area, and I mentioned we do the stratified distribution model for them. But there's also a bunch of communities and townships outside the metropolitan planning area. Their population essentially holds their own going forward. And if we had seen that that number was going to climb substantially, or that the growth, for instance, in Holly was going to be substantially higher than it is, you might start to look at maybe some capacity issues or some maybe turning movement issues or something like that down the road. But overall, the percentage of the percentage of traffic coming from those smaller communities is insignificant compared to the major corridors in the metro area, like South 8th Street.
Right.
You know, so it's just not making a big difference there. Yeah. What we do expect, of course, is the Moorhead growth planning effort is going to drive future development in those areas. And as we finish the TAS allocation, we may start to see, you know, some expansion of corridors there, maybe not new corridors, but even the connection of 12th all the way out to 336
right.
is going to be one of those things that'll probably be a big player in the future.
And there'll probably be another, I know there's discussion, and Commissioner Haney can talk about the north-south between 336 and our 34th Street right now. There's going to probably be another major
North-south.
north-south route
Exit
that
off the
would
interstate,
connect
yeah.
to Dilworth. Or
Yeah, there's a pretty
Highway
long
10
stretch
to
there.
94.
Yeah, Highway 1094.
So it'll be right on the east side of the airport then? I mean, west side of the airport?
Yep, I think it's 52nd Street or something like
Yeah.
that,
Okay.
50th to 52nd Street, I don't recall, Tim?
And that,
I don't recall, it comes up south
yeah.
it's the one that goes past Little Italy, I think, isn't it?
When they built the
Yes.
interstate 40 years ago, they put an apron out there for that.
But it's,
Right, just west of the way station.
Yes.
yeah, when that time comes, that certainly could be a major player in potential development too at that point, but, all right.
Probably just a footnote, one of the things that has changed, if you read the paper in the last 4 months, I guess, is that because Horace is seeing the likelihood of getting a capacity expansion in their sewer capacity, we do anticipate there'll be some more growth than we originally thought there. And
Mhm.
that'll be reflected in our final report.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it. Okay.
The city of Saban is here. You'd asked if the city of Saban was here. There you go. Just wanted you to know.
All right, Dave, you're up next here. And you have several items for us today, and you got Mike Love with Houston Engineering is also here, so we'll go right into the first item, which is the water and sanitary sewer easements for the county campus.
Yeah, did everybody get a copy in the packet?
We did, yes.
Okay, good deal. Mike does have a flash drive. I guess if you want, we can bring that up. If you don't need so, maybe we can just...
Why don't we proceed and try to do it without it, and if there gets to be questions where they want to see it, we can do that, because we are running a little bit behind.
Gotcha.
Nope, I can speed things up. Thanks for having me. So we have two things in front of you. There's easements for utilities that remained in 10th Street and 9th Avenue as a result of our street vacations, remember? So there's two separate easements. One is to the city of Moorhead, and that is for the sanitary sewer system. It runs north-south in 10th Street between 10th Avenue and 9th Avenue, and then east-west in 9th Avenue between 9th Street and 11th Street. And then the second one is a separate easement that would be granted to Moorhead Public Service, and that one is for the water main that's existing in those same streets.
Jenny, have you had a chance to review those easements?
I did, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
A motion for this then?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval to the Moorhead City Council. Is that what it is?
No, I think
No.
it's just approval to sign the
Just to
easement
approve, to sign
document.
the easement.
Okay.
To approve the easement itself.
All right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Okay. Brian, did you want me to give an update on the power too?
Sure, yes, please.
Okay.
I'll try to do just a brief update.
Okay.
So, Moorhead Public Service is underway doing the relocation of the power for the whole campus. They're going to do it in 2 phases. So there'll be a third easement document that comes later, and that'll be for the power. The reason why we haven't done it yet is because they're not sure, until they get the route done, since they're boring everything, they don't know if they're gonna run into things. We don't wanna define an easement area and then all of a sudden they go out of it and then we gotta redo the easement. So, the first phase is gonna run from 10th Street, 10th Avenue, it's gonna run down 10th Street, it'll pick up the new law enforcement center, it'll go down and pick up the existing transformer for the courthouse here and the existing jail, and then it'll continue down 10th Street to 8th Avenue, where it will tie into the Family Service Center. And they're gonna relocate the Family Service Center transformer because it's not in a really good spot right now, so they're gonna pull that out closer to 8th Avenue. And then they're gonna utilize the existing feed for the Family Service Center, so that first phase will be on a loop. And then once the underground utilities are done for the correctional facility, they'll do the second phase, which connects from the Family Service Center to the new correctional facility and then down to the power plant. And then that'll be on, that's the main loop, the second phase when it's done. That'll be the overall loop that'll be completed. So long story short, the first phase will allow everything to be powered. They're not anticipating any outages except for a short outage at Family Service Center. And then that system will be on a loop until they complete the second phase, and then everything will be on its permanent loop.
And all these easements that are gonna be required are on county-owned property.
Correct. So with the approval of these two, there's only one left, and that's for the power, so we should only have to come back once. We're gonna put these on the plat, and then we'll proceed with the plat, so the plat will be recorded here shortly, so
Okay.
the replat will be complete, and that'll all be taken care of, so.
All right, very good.
Any questions?
Moving right along. Thanks, Mike. All right, next we have the bid opening for the Ollie shop.
Yeah, we do have a few bids here. This is for the sale of our existing motor repair shop in the city of Holly. We did build a new facility, but jointly with the landfill, so we've got several bids here. I believe the only requirement was kind of a bidder's reserve check in the amount of $1,000, so we'll take a look, make sure they've got
Okay.
a check there, and looks like we got about 5 bids or so. I worked pretty hard over the last several years trying to figure out what might be valuation for the property. So we had some environmental concerns and things that we worked through. We got MPCA approval on everything and signed off. There was a little situation with the planning and zoning in the city of Hawley. Right now, it's currently zoned as residential. I'm assuming the new owners may not use it as residential, but we don't know. We did go to the planning commission from the county and tried to get it rezoned to highway commercial, which would maybe open it up for maybe more buyers. It was denied based on the fact they want to know exactly what purpose it's going to be. So I guess I see that point. So I'm guessing that the valuation could be anywhere between $70,000 up to $100,000, but I'd like to open bids today. I don't know for sure if we'll approve a high bid or not, but I guess we'll see what we get. First bidder, and hopefully I don't butcher the name too bad, but it's Jacob Waters, and he's got a $1,000 check here, and his bid for the shop is $40,101. $40,101. And the next bidder is Gary Myrie. He does have a check, amount of $1,000 here. Total bid, $40,551.00. $40,551.00. Next bidder is, looks like Paul Duchesne. Does have a check amount of $1,000. And his total bid is $52,000.00. $52,000 even. Next bidder is Justin Martin. Does have a check here, amount of $1,000. Total bid amount, $85,500.00. $85,500.00. The last bidder we have is Celine Brothers, and they have provided an actual bid bond here in the amount of $1,000. And the bid from Celine Brothers is $40,027.00. $40,027.00. Well, I guess.
There's really nothing for you to review.
True, yeah.
So it would seem to me that it would be in our best interest to accept the high bid.
We did get one bid that was quite a bit higher than the other. The others were all right in that $40,000 range. Over time, I expected a higher bid, but I did kind of sense this may come in this way just based on the property. The building in the appraisals, that we did some preliminary appraisals, didn't carry a lot of value on the building, and most of the valuations came from the property itself. It's a nice lot right in the city of Hawley, but we did get one bid that does look fairly close to what the county appraiser mentioned.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the bid by Justin Martin, $85,500.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign? Motion carried. All right. Thank you, Dave. Oh, you got some more here. Okay, so your, next is your geotech proposal for materials testing on parking lot.
Yeah, so this is all the work that's necessary in order for us to do the inspection work on the parking lot, 3 parking lots. It's comprised of 3 different items here. Soil observation and testing, checking the subgrade before we do the actual paving on it. It's the actual concrete testing, breaking all the cylinders to make sure that the curb and gutter, sidewalks, and driveway pavement meets the strength. and then report writing and project management. So the total estimated amount is $6,661.00. I think it seems fair. We've used Braun on almost all the testing on the law enforcement and correctional facility, and I guess I'd recommend we proceed with this.
All right.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to your approval of your yearly supplies bids.
So we opened these last Friday, and several of them are kind of a laundry list. We've got corrugated metal pipes, which we have a couple of suppliers, and one is local, and they're usually the cheapest, and it comes with delivery, which is True North Steel. We also have rental of construction equipment, which is another laundry list of different contractors throughout the county that we use depending on where we're at. I guess I'd like to get approval on the yearly supply bids. We've also got furnishing bituminous asphalt, which we did get 3 suppliers of that: Border States Paving, Central Specialties, and Northern Improvement. Northern Improvement had a real nice bid of $48 a ton there, which they're nice and centrally located, but there again, it kind of depends on what they have going on. If they've got a big paving project, we may have to buy a mix from another vendor, but we've got options here, which is what we've done in the past. The only thing we've really ever approved on the yearly supply bids would be the gravel contracts, because that's an actual contract. If we could get approval from Turner Sand and Gravel for townships 1 through 23 and 26 through 30.
Okay.
I have a question on that.
Correct.
On the gravel, why is it that only one company had the opportunity for hauling only from the county pit?
Only one company chose to bid out of that pit.
Okay.
Yep. And then we did get a second contractor, which would be Fitzgerald Construction. They were low bidder on townships 24 and 25. So last year, Turner got most of the townships with the exception of a few, and I think H&S Contracting got them, and then this year it's Fitzgerald Construction. But I did look at the numbers a little bit, compare them to last year to see how it's going to impact the budget. And for the most part, all the gravel coming out of the Felton pit is within a dime or so per yard, so it's pretty much the same. The big difference here is we're getting close to being done with the County 26 pit. It's almost dry, there's not much gravel there left. So last year we had a fairly sizable pile there, which is a lot closer, which means less haul. So there is no 26 pit volumes coming out of here, so the difference with that cost to the county is having that closer pit. It's roughly anywhere from $2 to $3 a yard more, which is all hauling, because it could be 10, 12, 15 miles closer. So definitely you can see the savings, I guess, to projects and counties if you've got your pits are closer to your projects and things. But so I guess my point being, gravel is pretty much the same as last year, with the exception of we got to come out of that Felton pit with more of our more material this year than we did last year.
And I just have one follow-up question. I know I've asked you in the past in regards to checking specs to make sure the material ratio is up to speed, and you and I were on the roads Friday, and there was a lot of really soft roads, and so I know some criticism that I've heard is that it seems like there's a lot of clay bind in a lot of this mix, and so let's just continue to monitor that.
Absolutely, thanks.
Okay, so I think you want to break this down a little bit, don't you? You want to have one for the bituminous mixture?
Maybe could we do one motion that would approve the yearly supplies for corrugated metal pipe, rental of construction equipment, and furnishing of bituminous mixture?
Okay, all right. Do we have a motion to that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? None, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Okay, then your next one is?
Would be the approval for Turner Sand and Gravel for townships 1 through 23 and 26 through 30.
And could we just include Fitzgerald in there for 24 and 25 then?
Correct.
All right, so the one motion that would list both those, all right.
Make a motion to approve Turner and Fitzgerald.
Okay?
Second.
And we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carried. All right, so now that puts us into your final contract on CASA 22.
Yeah, so this is the asphalt paving overlay that we did on Wall Street. It was in conjunction with the Watersheds Flood Mitigation Project. Our original bid on this project was $491,138.26. And I believe Knife River, no, it's RJ Zavril and Sons was the prime, but I think Knife River did the paving. We did overrun a little bit on some black dirt material. We didn't have enough black dirt in the plans, and we would have had a drop off had we not imported that. I think the project did turn out really well. I didn't have any complaints on it. They got it done on time. The final amount to be approved would be $511,473.03.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Dave, when we originally got that, from what was originally the estimate to the bid, that gave us some significant extra dollars, which allowed us to was it the County Road 6 project?
County Road 6 and County Road 2 were the two that we kind of.
So, does the fact that we're 20,000, are we still okay on those?
Yeah, I think the real big savings that year was on our County Road 95 grading project. That was several $100,000.
Yeah, but there was some savings on the 22 project too, wasn't there?
Yeah,
On this one?
a little bit.
Okay. Well, actually, that allowed us to do 22 and 6, I think is what it was. Okay, all right, very good. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried. All right, and then your last one is your MnDOT Master Partnership Agreement.
Yeah, so this is the agreement that was most recently approved in 2012. Comes with a resolution and an agreement. And what this does, it allows counties to work with the state in many different areas, whether they do soil borings or reutilize their lab. It's kind of a standard agreement that just kind of spells out how our business relationship is and gives us the ability to work with the state.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve resolution 2017-19. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed, the same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Dave. Do you have anything else?
He does have one more with the city of Saban.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're going to sit up for that. Okay, we'll go into our next item, which is the concerns regarding intersection County State Highway 52 and County State Highway number 11, and we have with us Tom from the Saban City Council. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning.
I'm
Welcome.
going to do an intro. Tom called me about a week ago in regards to this intersection. It's become more than slightly problematic for the city, and I did attend their city council meeting on Tuesday where they assigned a letter of recommendation that was included in your boxes. So Tom wanted to come together, and this is an issue that was revisited maybe three-ish years ago with the highway department, and so I did talk to Dave about coming forth with some of the recommendations that were had at that point.
All right, Tom?
I'm just here, a citizen group approached us again regarding the ongoing issues at this intersection. Safety concerns with citizens crossing it. Dave did visit us, like Danny said, recently, and we understand that from a traffic flow standpoint that this intersection may not meet the requirements for a four-way stop or another control device. But the layout of Saban is pretty unique. We think there's some other factors in play. If you look at the layout on this map that I gave you, most of the residential area of Saban is west of Highway 52, and the attractions or the things that our citizens are going to are on the other side. That would be the general store, the convenience store, the post office, Crowbar, the city hall. So there's a lot of foot traffic and bicycle traffic across that intersection. And one of the residents of Saban was supposed to attend with me today, but he was unable to make it. He recently witnessed an event that could have been pretty bad. A couple kids almost got hit, the cars didn't stop. Someone actually did stop to let those kids by, another car went around them. Those kids almost got taken out. But we see this a lot. My house is about a block from this, and I can see that intersection, and I just see ongoing issues. And I don't know that I have a solution, but we're just imploring the county to see if there's something that can be done, whether it be additional signage. And I understand from a four-way stop, it might not be efficient to have every car that goes through town have to come to a complete stop, so.
Dave, do you want to explain the process here that is normally done on this, and is this something that MnDOT ultimately decides,
No,
or?
this comes from our manual on uniform traffic control devices, or the MUTCD. So back in the day when we first got some of the concerns, Nathan dug into it a little bit, and if you want to take a look at this one right here, it just kind of goes into what are some of the criteria for looking into what they call a multi-way stop controlled intersection. There's engineering judgment, and there's also some criteria. The first criteria, A, talks about putting up signals. I think that everyone realizes that's probably not really the case here. Item B talks about 5 or more crashes in a 12-month period. So we took a look at crashes, and thank God we don't get crashes and that sort of thing. There was three accidents there. 2 of them were alcohol related in the night, and one was someone just blew a stop sign and got into a kind of a crash with someone on 52.
Is this in 15?
No, that would probably be in as far back as we could, maybe
okay.
10-year period.
Perfect.
Kind of a
Thanks.
deal. And then the next item, C, talks about minimum volumes, which is probably the biggest one here. It talks about needing at least 300 vehicles an hour on the people, on the side streets entering Highway 52. So 300 vehicles an hour for every hour for 8 hours it's a big, we're just not seeing those kind of volumes. And subpart 2 talks about combined vehicle, ped, or bicycles, which is kind of the situation that we're talking about here. We're really worried about our pedestrians, our children, our bikers, and that sort of thing. In order to warrant a multi-way stop, you'd need 200 of those units, combination of all 3 items per hour for the same 8-hour period, which we probably have peak hours, maybe after school or that sort of thing, or maybe on a weekend, but on any given 8-hour period, unfortunately, we just don't have that much traffic to meet what warrant is on the sheet here. Item 3 talks about 85th percentile speed on the major traffic roadway, I guess, which would be 52, of exceeding 40 miles an hour. We do have those, we put these little signs out there, there's radar speed signs that they flash when you go through there, and our plan for those signs has been to put them in Downer, because we got a lot of calls out there. Lake traffic is crazy, so we've been working with Sheriff's Department, and they actually tell us where to put them and how long to put them up, and they check them and grab all the data. But we put them in Downer, we put them in Comstock, we put them in Sabin, and I think our plan was maybe to put it up in the north of maybe Oakport, maybe on Highway 26, just to try to calm traffic down.
Permanently, or
well,
rotated? Right now, they come and go. So.
You're right. The theory on them is if you leave them too long, people become numb to them.
Okay.
So the plan is to keep moving them around a little bit. But I guess I don't, traffic through town is probably 30. I believe there's a 30-mile-an-hour sign out there. So when we initially brought this to Highway Committee, we went through it, and I guess my recommendation and the committee's recommendation was, it probably did not warrant 4-way stop intersection based on the traffic manual. But what we did commit to doing, and we did do it, is if everyone takes a look at this map here, the closer crosswalk painting was done. That was brand new. And then we did put up a couple of pedestrian signs. There's one on kind of the southeast quadrant, I guess, by the general store. There's a little yellow sign that points that there's a crosswalk there. And then there's another one in the northwest quadrant that points, that alerting traffic. It's the yellowish signs that it's a pedestrian warning sign. What we had always had intentions on doing, we just didn't quite get the design done and get it completed, but would be to add some ADA style and some pedestrian curb ramping. So that's what's shown on this map with the red, and I guess that would be my recommendation and suggestion today that we move forward on, is trying to provide, as you can see, there really is no sidewalk there in a lot of the the corners. In both quadrants on the north side of the intersection, there's very little sidewalk, and I'm hoping that this would allow for better visibility and better area for the foot traffic and the bike traffic to utilize.
I have a question. What would it cost to put the flashing pedestrian crossing lights on? Can you do it solar powered?
Yeah, there's
someone entrance.
A stop sign is $1,600 per sign for those.
Okay, but for the crosswalk ones?
It could be a little less. It's a smaller sign, but there again, most of the cost is probably in the brain part of it. It could be real. So it would never be more than $1,600.
So as somebody who drives this every day, there's 2 problems here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe 3, but the first problem is that I think people are blowing the stop sign from 11, either getting on to 52 or going across.
Which
So-
one of those accidents
Yep.
was that?
So I think that's part of the problem. The second problem is people are driving way too fast through town. And so that's problematic for people, especially kids now entering the summer going to 52. And the third part that's problematic from a traffic flow is people coming and going from the general store. When you come out that north entrance onto 11 and either you turn right or left,
We gotta fix
I
it.
mean,
We gotta fix
you just
that.
kind of sit
kinda
in
sweep.
limbo in the middle of the road and decide where you're gonna go. So I think there are some smaller things that we can figure out, but it's kind of threefold, I guess, from what I've observed. Especially since the snippet picture that's here, there's 2 semis and 1 car on this small area in a snapshot in time.
That's a
I mean,
Google Maps.
it's a major haul route, it's a major commuter route. So.
One of the things that probably realized why it took a little longer than we wanted is that intersection, the general store is right at like the 45-degree angle. It's in a terrible spot. So we've got to work with them and try to figure out exactly how we can relocate that works for everyone. And we've also got that power pole, as you can see, in kind of the northeast intersection there, again, right in the middle of in the corner there. So there's gonna have to be some utility relocates there. So it got to a point where it got a little, we had to get something figured out there, and then Nathan ended up leaving and Eric got it back on board. So it is our plan to get this done this summer yet. We're just kind of in the design phase, still in the design phase.
The concern of the high speed, that's on 52. Right, that's the issue, the driving issue in this is the amount of
It's
traffic.
the peak
on-
times during the week, morning and evening,
Yeah.
and then especially on weekends during the summer, there is a vast amount of lake traffic that comes through Saban.
Right.
We
Well-
saw a gentleman in a wheelchair sit there for almost 5 minutes one Sunday afternoon trying to get across that road. Finally, someone stopped and let him get across.
Commissioner Mojo asked the question about flashing caution lights. I think as opposed to, as you look at the criteria for four-way stop, that might be excessive here
I
for.
think stopping all the traffic would be excessive. Someone
Yeah.
even mentioned what kind of cost would be to those, like you see at Concordia College, those crossing arms where you push a button and it stops the traffic. So in that case, the traffic only needs stops when it's needed to stop.
Yeah.
And we as a city would look at cost sharing some of that if something like that was possible.
I think, because there's the one that comes to mind on 8th Street South, right by Concordia there, where they
Only stops when needed.
oftentimes there's no lights flashing at all.
I drive that road.
But then when there's a pedestrian, they push that button. But that gets to be a little bit more than a solar-operated thing
No, I
here
understand.
to get to that level. So,
Curious to know.
there's a couple of options we could maybe ask our engineer to look at, would be to, one, what would happen if we were to start with some sort of solar, just constant, so they're constantly on, yellow flashing, which would get the attention of the drivers, more so than what's there now. And I'm going to refer to that as north-south. I might be a
That's what
little
we
bit
call it,
off, because
too.
it's, yeah.
Yep.
So, but have those on the north-south on 52, going in each direction.
And is it probably only crossing east to west? So if you had
Yeah,
some
this is-
sort of a ITS system there where they could hit it and it would flash and stop cars like on 8th Street, you would maybe only stop them here. I would guess going,
You don't need it there.
yeah, going south to the general store would probably be, so maybe we could bring,
It's
I
just
could
Highway 52. that's
do a
fine.
little research and bring back
I think
some options.
there's a couple of options, I think, to look at. What would it cost to do a solar-powered flashing caution light? I think that's kind of what you were thinking too, isn't it, Commissioner? So, on going both north and south, prior to that intersection, so there's warning that they're coming on this, what's a significant intersection. That would just be run by solar, and there would, at that point, I'm not talking about buttons that would push. They would just simply be flashing all the time.
It's like the signs that are there, but with lights on.
Yeah, it's like our stop signs,
Yeah,
in some
Barnesville
rural
has
areas.
reds blinking
Yeah.
on solar on Main.
Well, and then the other option would be, if you wanted to get into more of what you're suggesting, where somebody in a wheelchair would push a button and it would stop traffic, I don't know that there's any solar powered thing that can even do that. That would have to be an electrical
Semaphore.
mechanical signal.
Yeah, I think they call it like a Hawk system is one of the systems that I've heard.
So that's gonna be considerably more expensive, but my thought would be is if we were to, you know, if the board is open to that, and of course, Dave has a lot of influence on that, but to try those caution lights and see how they work, because they're, comparatively speaking, from an expense standpoint, the solar is gonna be, you start.
Considerably less money, we acknowledge.
Yeah, you wouldn't have any electrical work. and that
Yeah,
sort of
you
thing.
get into the other ones, and you're getting into some serious dollars, which, you know, ultimately, we're talking about saving lives here, so that's an important issue too.
Would it be appropriate to bring back cost options
I think so.
to the board, and they can take a look and see what,
That's the way to go.
and I can also work with the city too, and, you know, and we can put together maybe a little plan of what they may or may not like to or be willing to cost share and that sort of thing. If we would, you know, if they would like one option a little better, maybe they would be willing to fund something. And I've never really put one of those in. It is currently in our Glendon plan though, over by the school there. We do have
Right.
some ITS in that plan, so we're, and I know there's one by my house, there's one right behind my house. If the kids come through and they push a button and it really lets you know. And I think something like that would be a good option if that's what we're looking for. I think the ones that just sit and blink all day long forever, I kind of think traffic would eventually not even see it after a couple of years, but
What was the original request? What is it we want for saving, the four-way stop?
Well, we, not understanding how all the traffic flows work, we blindly asked for a four-way stop a few years ago.
Okay, you know, because
And
I
Dave
sort of
came
looked
to
at,
our- I will acknowledge Dave came to our meeting, brought some options, and we appreciate that.
yeah, I mean, I sort of look, I mean, you're sort of unique. You got all your businesses on one side and all your residential on the other side. They all have to cross to get to the post office, to get to the convenience store and whatever, you know, so all your stuff has to cross that.
That is a major.
You know, so I don't know if a four-way stop is out of the way. I mean, I sort of look at this too.
How about like, speed bumps or sleeping policemen, they
Can't do that on the state highway, I don't think, can they?
I guess, I don't know, we have never put any of those up.
I would
I'd be
think
more
with
happy to
truck
go with.
traffic, that would be a.
Yeah,
I do hate to see all the traffic have to stop, because
sure.
I don't-
99% of the time, there isn't someone like that.
And
I mean-
Brian, maybe you can let the sheriff's office know about the speed issue, and maybe they can do some
We are fortunate, we
enforcement
have
out
two
there.
two
so-
deputies that live in our town.
Yep, and
Maybe
they
they
are
could,
on.
maybe they can hang out there a half hour beginning and end of their shifts or something as they're coming and going.
That gets attention for a
Yeah.
while.
It sounds like the city does understand that a four-way maybe isn't maybe the correct option.
I would agree with that. though.
Yeah, and you know, I guess,
It would be the lowest cost option at the time we first tried it out.
Well, why don't we, you know, we thank you for being here, and we certainly want to do what we can to try to help. So, Dave, if you could maybe come up with some options.
Sure.
and
we can do that.
Oftentimes that, you know, you can maybe even put it on the highway track and you can review those and.
I mean, I sort of look at these guidelines that we got here, I feel they're high. I mean, if I had that much traffic in front of my house, I think I want a stop sign, I don't
I
know.
understand the guidelines, but I don't know that they take in all the factors.
Right, and I agree with you, because your residential is on one side and your business on another side.
You
I don't
know,
know.
the last option with the whole thing was engineering judgment, which does then help you in these cases that aren't quite unique, you know, so I think we're on the right track.
I mean, what kind of traffic are we looking at through Sabin? I mean, I know I've been there so many times, but it just, what are we looking at daily going through there?
Significant traffic.
Several thousand.
In the morning and evening, you know, when people are, there's a lot of Barnesville traffic, for example, comes through town.
Okay.
Going to work, coming from work. And Friday afternoons and Sunday evenings, the lake traffic is,
It's a major haul road for trans systems, the Sabin Beat Pile
Yeah.
south of town. It's a major haul road for 4 or 5 gravel companies. Fitzgerald is located in Sabin, so they're headed
yeah.
any direction.
They got more traffic when they come in the westbound ramp on Old 52 also. here, more.
My house is this one, right? One block down, on my deck. I'll sit on my deck and I'll just be amazed Sunday afternoon, so much traffic is.
I mean, if we got that much traffic, probably do need more of a control.
Yeah.
It's the side info traffic that I understand is just not there.
It would be nice to only control the traffic when there's a person there.
That would be the ideal.
Well,
Speed
and let's,
bumps and
but,
four ways
and
and
let's
that.
get a price on that, and then we can, you know, we can
Well, we're looking at pedestrian traffic going across there, but what about vehicle traffic going across 11? Do they have problems getting across?
Sometimes you have trouble entering. I know if I am leaving at 8 AM, 1 block down, I might have to wait quite a while to be able to turn left onto that road.
I mean, it's not
And
just,
if there was a control error, or do I have to go around and hit
With a
that
loop
intersection?
on it to make the turn signal.
yeah, it's not just pedestrian traffic you're looking at here, I
It
think.
is a very unique curve. I think it's a headache for the highway department in the winter because of the way it curves in onto 52.
Just the way
and
11
it's-
kind of zigzags through town.
All right, Dave, why don't you,
Thanks, Tom.
I appreciate your time. Thank you all very much.
Yep.
we'll definitely follow up with you. Okay. All right, let's go into committee reports. I'm going to start to my left today. Jim, do you want to start?
Here in the headlights. On Tuesday, I attended the Adult Mental Health LAC and heard some of the concerns about the providers and the consumers that were there. There's a lot more consumers there than any of the other committees that I've been to. On Thursday, I attended the Lake Agassiz Regional Library full board meeting, and on Friday, I attended the CERT graduation with county and city employees that took the emergency response team training. And that was very nice. It was very nice to see those county and city employees step up to undergo that kind of training so that we've got a reserve of people that are prepared for unthinkable disasters that could always happen. Yesterday, Monday, I attended the Clay County Collaborative ACES Summit meeting for the local advisory committee for children's mental health. And the providers were each given a helping hand trophy, which I was supposed to bring with me and show off, but it looks like this kind of, and thanks them for lending a helping hand. And on Monday, several of us attended the Fire Appreciation Proclamation at the Dilworth Community Center, in which this Friday was designated as the date for people to wear red in support of the fire department and emergency technicians. And so that's going to be this Friday. So everybody, please wear red on Friday to show solidarity with the fire departments. That consists of my whole report.
Okay, Commissioner Gross?
Okay. Tuesday we had highway tracking, and there we discussed possibly getting some additional funds, looking at doing, I think County Road 1. Highway 6 is being paved. I think that's, I don't know if that's completed, if they completed that this week, I think, or last week. So I think that's done. We're also looking at replacing the bridge at Hagen Township. From there, I went to the Sanford Hospital tour, which was very impressive. It's looks like they're going to be really ready to take in patients here in the middle of July or end of July, I think it is. They're going to start doing it, and a lot of plants were out there. It really looks like a nice hospital. Also took Heartland Trail Tuesday afternoon. Hawley got notified that they were not included for the Heartland Trail funds to assist in their project of Highway 33 going through town. So that may change their plans a little bit in redoing Highway 33. We also went through some of the Minnesota legislative updates, Senate File 974 and House File 1272. I guess we'll see how they come out today or tomorrow, or by 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. Wednesday, Historical Society. And there we got 3 new members: Warren Hildy from Bell Bank, Amy Lammers from Crystal Sugars, and Dennis Herbertson from Rolock are new members of the Historical Society. So we welcome them to the group. I invited them. Mark Peel was awarded a presentation for, given an award for his work in the Historical Society, and I asked them to bring that to the commission meeting, probably, and give that presentation and tell us what it's all about. Let's see. Thursday, we had PIC committee, and that was already, we had that part of it, our agenda this morning, pretty well discussed that already, so. And again, on Monday, yesterday, I was with 4 of our commissioners here that were all at the fire and ambulance, and Jim already covered that. That was mine.
Commissioner Wendell?
Let's see, I had Greater Fargo EDC Executive Committee meeting last week, and we just said committee reports, and we had a presentation by the Bank of North Dakota. We had a Finance Committee meeting on the jail and law enforcement center last week, and talked about the issue with our heating system and how we're gonna deal with that, and once we get all the information, we'll be bringing something to the board on that, and then talked about the capital improvement plan, which we've already discussed this morning. And then I also attended the fire and EMS appreciation event yesterday. That was it for me.
Commissioner Wendell?
Thank you. Last week I attended the Sabin City Council meeting, as I noted with the item that we just finished talked about. I had the executive committee for MetroCog last week as well, where we talked about establishing a memorandum of understanding with West Fargo Human Resources. And the North Dakota Department of Transportation is asking the different MPOs to revisit the CPG formula. We had over an hour discussion on it. It was a vaguely veiled request, so we asked for some clarification from NDOT and maybe some stuff in writing. And then the next day I had the MetroCog Policy Board, where we talked about the Transportation Improvement Plan for 2017 through 2020. We talked about, or asked for proposals for the 52nd Avenue South Corridor, and had one thing for Moorhead was the ADA Transition Plan Consultant recommendation. Everyone loves to abbreviate these words in all these different committees, so I apologize. There's just a lot of abbreviations. And then we talked about the 17th Avenue South Corridor study recommendations. So that concluded that. I was invited to speak at the New Leadership Conference that Deb White puts on at the university in Moorhead, and all of the female city council members from Moorhead were also there. It was a good opportunity to talk with some people that are talking about maybe running for office someday, so that was a good thing. I spent the majority of the morning driving around with Dave Overbo to a considerable amount of gravel roads in southern Clay County. My phone has been ringing constantly with concerns. There's some issues with shoulders being brought in, and then now that we got the rain and roads are considerably soft, so I think people were out working on those, and I hope those problems can be addressed. We also, I was asked to go to a property in Baker about ditch systems not draining in Baker, and it's not the railroad's problem. Is it the watershed's problem? Is it the county's problem? So we're working on those, so we'll see what happens there. And then yesterday, I apologize for missing the Joint Powers Conference, but there I was at Lakeland in Fergus Falls, where we had good updates from all the different collaboratives and administrative updates from the Fergus Falls providers. One big topic was the 2018 county funding request for outpatient and psychiatry. It was, if you recall, Lakeland has not asked for an increase for the last 4 or 5 years, and they did propose a 2% increase. Psychiatry is continuing to have losses, and my concern was that all of the other programs have had really good margins for the last few years, and Lakeland has about a 10% margin, and so I could not, in good conscience, bring a 2% increase to this board since their margins have been so good. So we did deny that request. And then we had updates from the Otter Tail County Human Services and Clay County Social Services. They were really excited to hear that Clay County had written for a grant for the officer training that will be happening in June, and I think Otter Tail would like to follow suit in writing for a grant for possibly at the end of the fall, so it might be a good, if Julie can't schedule to have officers gone because of covering shifts, that maybe they could take part in that training at the end of the summer. That concludes my reports.
Okay, I had the highway tracking meeting last week, and there was some updates on the 11th Street North signage on the cost share with the city, and we're only going to be required to pay a portion of this on the signals only on that work that's there. We've had our lobbyist in Washington, prior work they've done was helped to solidify some funds over time that allowed that Highway 52 to be rebuilt. It was an expensive project that took a few years to do. And she was in touch with Dave and is willing to go to work for us on some additional funding on a pro bono basis. And so we did suggest that Dave contact her and maybe update her on some potential projects that would qualify for that type of funding. Then we had, I did also attend that same day that Sanford facility tour. That was quite an amazing place, and that they're scheduled to open at 5 a.m. on July 25th is there when they're going to open those doors. We had the Finance Committee meeting, and again, Grant covered that good in terms of what was discussed, and the same with the PIC meeting. We had really, it was just the one issue, and we dealt with that this morning. That was on the Janelle's from probation issue. And I also then attended yesterday the law enforcement appreciation press conference for Fire and EMS Week. That's all that I have. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one additional thing. Many of the meetings that you have been mentioned here, I attended as well. But highway tracking, also the county is going to work with this on the project, that Highway 12 project around the school, that half mile of road that the city is being turned over to the city. The county is going to work with the city on the inspection of it, which should save them quite a bit of money in regards to that. So another cooperative effort by the county and the city. I had met with Darren and Janelle, reference the personnel issue on the probation that was taken care of this morning. We did have a meeting with Channel 11, came over and did some interviews with Julie and Rhonda and Marie Swanson from the jail ministry in regards to the new program at the jail, and that is going to be on tonight at 10 o'clock on Channel 11. So if you pay attention and see that on there, that's where it comes from. Had the jail finance meeting, that's been addressed in detail there. Had a central administrators or managers meeting, central administration managers meeting. PIC meeting's already been discussed. I met with Matt Serro and Brian Green, reference fire rescue teams and costs and different things. I attended the CERT presentation last Friday that Commissioner Haney spoke about, and yes, that is a very good collaborative effort between the city and the county, and to have a group of people that can go and assist in something like that. There's so many different things that law enforcement is required to do, an emergency fire is required to do during a disaster, that it would really be helped to have a semi-trained group that is willing to partake in that, and I know Darren is part of that group, came through the safety committee. Attended that ceremony yesterday morning at the Dilworth Fire. One thing I do want to mention about the Commissioner Mojo talked about the training for the officers at the jail, the correctional officers, and that really came, I feel, through the Behavioral Health Committee. It was discussed what we could do, and Julie said one of the best things that can happen is her correctional officers receive training on how to handle and evaluate people. It's a 4-day training, I believe, and this funding that Rhonda worked on and got the grant for, and then Lieutenant Swenson from the PD really coordinated. He was given kudos for coordinating this training, and it's going to be open to other law enforcement officers, but the correctional officers are hopefully going to be involved in that. So that was a real positive thing from that Behavioral Health Committee. And then I had 3 evaluations that I have given the last few days here, Tim Magnuson, Tim Dent, and Joe Olson. So lots of different things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
No, thank you.
All right. Very good.